You've been quiet for weeks, maybe months. He hasn't called, hasn't texted, hasn't even glanced your way. And in that silence, something dangerous is happening. You're starting to wonder if he thinks you've moved on. But here's the truth: silence doesn't define your worth. Your value is louder than words. And tonight, I want to show you how to take that power back. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forces in human interaction. Many people see it and immediately assume weakness, passivity, or even defeat. They think that if you're quiet, if you haven't sent the text, picked up the phone, or made the first move, you are somehow less invested, less caring, or less human. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Silence is not submission. Silence is strength. It is a statement in itself. It is the unspoken proclamation that your time, energy, and emotions are yours to control, and no one else's. When you remain silent in the face of uncertainty, when you resist the urge to chase or beg, you are not shrinking, you are rising. You are choosing yourself, and that choice is louder than 1,000 words ever could be. To understand silence as power, you must first separate it from fear. Fear is reactive. It stems from doubt, insecurity, or desperation. Silence as a choice, however, comes from a place of deliberate strength. It is the ability to hold your tongue, to restrain your impulses, and to refuse to react to someone else's inaction. This is not easy. The mind constantly whispers. Call them, text them, send a sign that you're still here. And yes, that voice is powerful. But the person who can resist it, who can say, I will not compromise my dignity or my peace for someone who cannot meet me where I am, is practicing a form of power that is rare and unstoppable. When you realize that silence is not about giving up, but about maintaining control over your own narrative, you step into a new realm of self-respect. Silence also serves as a mirror, reflecting your own emotions back at you. In those quiet moments, you are forced to confront the truth of what you feel, why you feel it, and what you want from your life. This introspection is critical because it separates reaction from intention. When you speak too soon, when you act impulsively out of longing or frustration, you surrender your power to circumstance and to someone else's behavior. But silence gives you the space to see clearly. It allows you to distinguish between genuine desire and fleeting impulse, between someone worth your attention and someone who simply occupies it. In choosing to be silent, you are not hiding, you are learning. You are preparing yourself to respond not out of need, but out of clarity. Moreover, silence has a magnetic quality. People often underestimate the effect of someone who does not demand attention, but carries an unmistakable presence. When you are silent, you are not pleading, you are not bargaining, you are simply being. And in that being, others notice. They sense the self-respect, the confidence, the refusal to settle for less than they deserve. In relationships, this is transformative. A person who recognizes the value of their own time and attention projects strength that words cannot replicate. It is the quiet assertion that you will not be overlooked, that your life will continue with or without recognition from anyone else. That is the power of silence. It communicates boundaries, confidence, and dignity all at once. Finally, silence is a shield against emotional exhaustion. When someone ignores you, delays, or tests your patience, it is easy to become entangled in their behavior. You might start to question yourself, replay conversations in your mind, or exhaust your emotional energy trying to fill the silence with your own voice. Choosing to remain silent is not just about self-respect. It is about self-preservation. It is the recognition that your energy is finite, that your time is precious, and that you cannot pour into someone else's uncertainty without first filling your own cup. Silence protects you from unnecessary pain and preserves your ability to engage fully when the time is right. It reminds you that your worth does not depend on someone else's recognition or action. In this way, silence is not absence, it is presence. Presence in your own life, on your own terms, in your own power. Clarity doesn't arrive in a text message. It doesn't arrive in a call. It doesn't come from waiting for someone else to define your feelings or validate your worth. Clarity comes from one place, and one place only: you. Self-awareness is the foundation of all strength, the compass that guides you through uncertainty, the mirror that reflects not just who you are, but who you refuse to become. When you are quiet, when you step back from the chaos of assumptions and projections, that is the moment you meet yourself. You see what you want, what you deserve, and what you cannot compromise on. Without self-awareness, silence can become empty. But with it, silence transforms into power. The first step toward clarity is understanding your own emotions. Many people let their feelings run unchecked. Anger, frustration, sadness. They swirl inside, unexamined, driving behaviors you don't even recognize. You react to perceived slights, overanalyze messages, or obsess over someone else's actions because you haven't yet faced the truth of your own heart. Self-awareness changes that. It forces you to ask the hard questions. Why does their silence hurt me? What am I really feeling? Am I acting from love or from fear? When you answer these honestly, you gain insight that no one else can give you. You start to see patterns, both in yourself and in the other person. And once you see clearly, you stop reacting blindly and start choosing deliberately. Clarity also comes from separating your identity from your circumstances. Too often, we tie our worth to the attention, approval, or recognition of someone else. When they are silent, we panic. When they delay, we doubt. When they seem distant, we fear we are not enough. But self-awareness teaches you this truth: your value does not fluctuate based on someone else's behavior. You are whole, complete, and deserving regardless of their attention. Recognizing this creates a calmness, a steadiness that cannot be shaken by uncertainty. You learn to sit in your own power, to be grounded in your own life, and to wait, not out of desperation, but from a place of clarity and confidence. Moreover, self-awareness allows you to set intentions rather than simply reacting. Without it, you can fall into the trap of endless what-ifs, replaying scenarios in your mind, imagining every possible outcome, and exhausting yourself emotionally in the process. But when you are aware of your own needs, boundaries, and desires, you can act with purpose. You know exactly what you will accept, exactly what you will not, and exactly what will move you forward. This is critical because life rarely gives us clear-cut answers. People leave, people falter, people confuse us. But when your internal compass is strong, when you understand yourself fully, you are never lost. Your choices become deliberate, your actions precise, and your path forward unmistakable. Finally, self-awareness transforms silence into a tool of empowerment. When you are aware, you recognize that the world does not have to dictate your reactions. Silence is no longer a passive waiting game. It becomes an active declaration of your values. It becomes a shield that protects your peace. It becomes a mirror that reflects your self-respect and your priorities. The more aware you are of your own emotions and intentions, the less you are swayed by the uncertainty of someone else's silence. You realize that while they may not understand your worth, you do. And that is all that truly matters. Self-awareness turns quiet contemplation into unshakable strength. It allows you to rise above doubt, to act from conviction, and to live your life with purpose, clarity, and power. Assumptions are dangerous. They sneak in quietly, disguised as thoughts, as worries, as what-ifs. And before you know it, they've taken control of your mind and your heart. When someone has been silent, it is easy to start filling the emptiness with stories. Stories of rejection, stories of indifference, stories of betrayal. You imagine what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what they must be doing. You paint scenarios in your mind that are often far from reality. The problem is, assumptions give power to people who aren't even in the room. They allow someone else's actions or inaction to dictate your emotions, your confidence, and your choices. And that, my friend, is a trap. When you live in assumptions, you surrender your power. The first step in breaking free from assumptions is awareness. Recognize when your mind starts weaving stories that aren't based on facts. Ask yourself, do I know this to be true, or am I guessing? Often, the answer is the latter. Silence does not automatically mean disinterest. Delay does not automatically mean rejection. People have lives, struggles, distractions, and fears that you cannot see. Yet, when you assume the worst, you give your peace away for free. Awareness is the beginning of freedom. Once you see the trap, you can step out of it. You can refuse to let imagined scenarios dictate your emotions, and instead ground yourself in reality. Next, understand that assumptions are usually fueled by fear. Fear whispers, they don't care about you. They've moved on, they are replacing you. And suddenly your mind is a battlefield. But here's the truth. Fear is rarely the messenger of reality. It's the messenger of insecurity. When you act on fear-driven assumptions, you are reacting to your own doubts, not to someone else's intentions. This is why clarity is essential. Clarity, born from self-awareness, cuts through the fog of fear and reveals the truth. You do not need someone else's attention to validate your worth. Silence, delays, or absence may not be about you at all. They may have nothing to do with your value. Recognizing that keeps you centered and unshakable. Another key to overcoming assumptions is the practice of asking questions instead of drawing conclusions. When you're silent, you can sit with the facts. You can observe without injecting your own narratives. Instead of assuming, ask yourself, what do I know? What is real? What can I confirm? The difference is subtle, but it is profound. Assumptions are imaginative. They are guesses and projections. Questions are grounded. They seek truth. When you replace assumptions with curiosity, you reclaim control over your own emotions. You stop reacting to imagined stories and start responding to reality. You empower yourself to act with intention, not fear. Finally, refusing to be controlled by assumptions is an act of self-respect. It is a declaration that no one's behavior, no one's silence, no one's uncertainty will dictate your self-worth. You are not at the mercy of imagined scenarios or hypothetical outcomes. You are the author of your own story, and silence does not give anyone else the pen. This mindset transforms how you move through life. Instead of obsessing over what he might be thinking, you focus on what you know to be true, your value, your boundaries, and your purpose. You refuse to be shaken by shadows of possibility because your feet are planted firmly in the soil of reality. Assumptions may be loud in the world, but they have no power over the one who chooses clarity, awareness, and self-respect. When you stop letting assumptions control you, a remarkable thing happens: freedom. Freedom from worry, from overthinking, from the exhausting mental gymnastics of trying to predict someone else's actions. Freedom to live fully in your own life, to invest in yourself, to move forward with confidence. Freedom to recognize that their silence, their distance, their choices, whatever they may be, cannot define you unless you allow it. And when you live in that freedom, you not only protect your peace, you elevate your entire presence. You walk with dignity, with strength, and with a confidence that assumptions can never shake. Your time and energy are two of the most valuable resources you will ever possess. Once spent, they can never be reclaimed. And yet so often people give them away freely, sometimes without realizing it, to individuals who cannot or will not appreciate them. When someone is silent, when they test your patience or your attention, it is tempting to chase, to plead, to fill the void they have created. But in doing so, you surrender your most precious assets. Valuing your time and energy is not selfish. It is essential. It is a declaration that you are worthy of focus, of attention, and of respect. No one has the right to siphon your energy unless you allow it. Understanding the value of your time starts with boundaries. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you. They are the framework of your self-respect. When someone is absent or inconsistent, setting limits on how much mental and emotional energy you devote to them is an act of courage. It says, I will not waste my presence on uncertainty. I will not chase someone who cannot meet me where I am. Boundaries protect your peace and preserve your clarity. They ensure that your efforts are directed toward growth, toward meaningful connections, and toward opportunities that honor your worth. Without boundaries, silence can become a form of emotional exploitation. With boundaries, it becomes a form of empowerment. Valuing your energy also means being intentional about what and who deserves it. Every thought, every emotion, every ounce of focus you invest is a choice. You can choose to spend it obsessing over someone else's silence, imagining scenarios, replaying conversations, or trying to force a response. Or you can choose to invest it in yourself, your passions, your goals, your growth. Energy is like currency. You wouldn't throw money into the wind hoping someone notices. Treat your attention the same way. Choose wisely, because the people and situations that deserve your energy will respect it, nurture it, and reflect it back. The ones who do not simply reveal themselves through their absence. Silence often tests your patience, but it also teaches a lesson. Energy mismanagement leads to regret. Think of the hours spent wondering why he hasn't called, why he hasn't texted, why he seems distant. Those hours are precious. Once lost, they cannot be reclaimed. But when you recognize the power of valuing your energy, you reclaim them. You decide how to spend each moment, each thought, and each emotion. You stop allowing someone else's inaction to dictate the state of your mind. You stop letting your own desires be hijacked by uncertainty. And in that recognition, you discover freedom. The freedom to live fully, the freedom to invest in yourself, and the freedom to maintain your dignity without compromise. Finally, valuing your time and energy is a direct reflection of your self-worth. When you honor yourself, others will be guided consciously or unconsciously to respect you. People can sense when someone refuses to be taken for granted. They can see it in your posture, your words, your actions, and your boundaries. By valuing your time and energy, you communicate without speaking that you are not disposable, that your life is not on hold, and that your presence is not up for negotiation. Silence then becomes a tool of empowerment rather than a source of anxiety. You are no longer at the mercy of someone else's choices. Instead, you are the curator of your own life, the guardian of your own energy, and the author of your own story. When you truly grasp the importance of valuing your time and energy, you begin to make decisions that serve you rather than drain you. You stop chasing attention that is not freely given. You stop bending over backward for acknowledgement that may never come. You invest in people, projects, and pursuits that enhance your life rather than deplete it. This is not just self-preservation. It is self-mastery. It is the recognition that your life, your mind, and your heart are precious, and that giving them away recklessly diminishes your power. By valuing your time and energy, you reclaim control over your life, your emotions, and your destiny. Words are powerful, but they are fragile. They can be broken, misinterpreted, or ignored. Promises can be made and forgotten. Texts can be read and dismissed, but action, true, consistent action, cannot be denied. When someone is silent, it is tempting to fill that silence with words, messages, calls, explanations, attempts to clarify or pleas for attention. But words alone are fleeting. They do not demand respect or prove commitment. Action is the language of truth. Action is what separates those who merely say they care from those who actually show it. Understanding this distinction is critical because your life and your peace depends on recognizing the difference. Choosing action over words begins with yourself. Silence is only powerful if it is paired with meaningful movement. If you sit in silence but allow it to paralyze you, then it becomes a cage rather than a tool. But when you take action, when you invest in yourself, your passions, your growth, your silence transforms into an unspoken statement of strength. It says, I am not waiting around. I am living. I am moving forward. I am prioritizing my life above uncertainty. This is the kind of action that speaks louder than anything anyone else can say or do. You demonstrate that your life is not contingent upon someone else's attention, and in doing so, you reclaim your power. Action also demands accountability. When you act, you take responsibility for your own life. You stop blaming someone else for your happiness or your lack of clarity. You stop asking, why isn't he calling? Why hasn't he reached out? Instead, you ask, what can I do to grow today? How can I invest in my own future? How can I show my worth through my choices, not my words? Accountability shifts the focus from waiting to creating, from reacting to building, from fear to confidence. It turns silence into opportunity. It transforms absence into a stage for your own growth and self-expression. Moreover, action communicates more than words ever could. Think about it. Someone who repeatedly says they care, but never follows through loses credibility. Someone who promises change, but never acts breeds disappointment. But when you take deliberate action, when you move forward in your career, your health, your relationships, and your personal growth, people notice. Your life itself becomes a testament to your worth, your resilience, and your focus. You don't have to explain or justify. You don't have to send endless messages or demand recognition. Your actions speak clearly. You are moving forward. You are prioritizing yourself, and you are not defined by someone else's absence. That is a power that cannot be ignored. Finally, action over words protects your emotional energy. When you rely solely on words, you tether your happiness and peace to someone else's communication, which is unpredictable and often unreliable. Silence becomes painful because it is filled with imagined meanings and unconfirmed assumptions. But when your energy is invested in action, in creating, in growing, and in living intentionally, the void left by silence is no longer empty. It is filled with purpose. You become unstoppable because your life is fueled by your own choices rather than someone else's attention. Action transforms waiting into movement, frustration into progress, and uncertainty into empowerment. Action is not just about achieving goals or being productive. It is about living a life that reflects your values, integrity, and self-respect. It is about showing yourself and the world that your presence is intentional, meaningful, and powerful. When someone is silent, when they test your patience or delay their engagement, remember this: your actions will always speak louder than their absence. Your choices will always define you more than their indecision. And your life, lived boldly and intentionally, will always be louder than any words left unspoken. Moving on is not about giving up. It is about stepping into your own power. Too often, people mistake grace for passivity, kindness for weakness, and detachment for indifference. But moving on gracefully is neither passive nor easy. It is an active choice, a deliberate decision to honor yourself, protect your peace, and refuse to be defined by someone else's actions or inactions. When someone has been silent, when they test your patience or leave you questioning your worth, moving on gracefully is the ultimate act of self-respect. It says, I am more than your attention. I am more than your inconsistency. I am more than your silence. Grace in moving on begins with acceptance. Acceptance does not mean you condone what happened or that you forget the pain. It means you acknowledge the reality of the situation. This person may not be ready, willing, or able to meet you where you are. They may not value you the way you deserve. Acceptance is not resignation. It is clarity. It is the recognition that waiting indefinitely, hoping for change or chasing validation, is a misuse of your time, energy, and life. Once you accept the truth, you free yourself from the emotional chains that keep you tethered to uncertainty, and you create the space to move forward with dignity. Moving on gracefully also requires self-reliance. You cannot allow someone else's actions, or lack of them, to dictate your happiness. Too many people look outside themselves for validation, for reassurance, for signs that they are enough. But the truth is, your sense of worth must come from within. When you move on gracefully, you rely on your own confidence, your own accomplishments, and your own growth. You invest in yourself first, not as a tactic to make someone regret their choices, but as a testament to your own value. The stronger your self-reliance, the less their absence can shake you, and the more your life becomes a reflection of your inner strength rather than someone else's behavior. Another key element of moving on gracefully is detachment from expectation. Too often, people cling to hope that silence will eventually turn into attention, that absence will eventually lead to presence, or that inconsistency will eventually become commitment. But moving on gracefully requires releasing these expectations. You stop placing the power of your emotional stability in someone else's hands. You stop holding your breath, waiting for signs or replaying the past. Instead, you focus on what you can control: your actions, your choices, and the energy you invest. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you care for yourself first and foremost. It transforms longing into freedom and obsession into opportunity. Moving on gracefully is also a demonstration of emotional intelligence. It requires patience, self-discipline, and courage. It is easy to react angrily, to lash out, to try to force attention or resolution. That is the path of weakness disguised as strength. True strength, the kind that resonates and inspires, lies in maintaining composure, in walking away without bitterness, and in continuing your life with intention. When you move on gracefully, you rise above pettiness, above resentment, and above the chaos of uncertainty. You maintain your dignity, your integrity, and your sense of self, qualities that no one's silence can ever take away. Finally, moving on gracefully positions you for a better future. Life is full of opportunities, relationships, and experiences that are waiting for you. By choosing to step away from someone who does not meet you where you are, you open yourself to connections that will honor your worth. You create space for growth, adventure, and fulfillment that silence cannot provide. And whether they return or remain absent, it no longer defines you. You have already won. By refusing to compromise your value, by prioritizing your peace, and by living a life aligned with your own power, moving on gracefully is not a concession. It is a victory. It is proof that you are strong enough to rise above uncertainty, wise enough to preserve your energy, and courageous enough to live fully on your own terms. So, if you've been silent for too long, if you've wondered whether he thinks you've moved on, remember this: your silence is not weakness. Your clarity, your awareness, your boundaries, your actions, and your grace, they all speak louder than words ever could. You do not need someone else to define your worth. You do not need someone else to validate your presence. The truth is, your life is already full of power, purpose, and possibility. Stand tall. Protect your peace. Invest in yourself. Move forward with intention, knowing that every step you take, every choice you make, every ounce of energy you invest in yourself is a declaration of strength. The world may be quiet around you, but within you is a roar that cannot be silenced. And when you choose to rise, to act, to live intentionally, and to move on gracefully, you are sending a message far louder than any words ever could. I am whole. I am strong, and I will not be defined by anyone else's absence. So hold your head high, walk boldly, and live your life on your terms, because silence is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your power. Das